One of the worst things about making applesauce is peeling and coring the apples. That's probably one of the main reasons I never make applesauce. But I have since discovered this new method, it's not new, but new to me, of pre-cooking my apples ahead and then running them through a food mill, which saves so much time and so much hassle and makes great applesauce. Now, it's not a downfall because most people who do canning have a food mill, but you do need a mill or something like that that you can process this through to get out the seeds and skin and cores after. So you want to take whatever size pot you're going to need for the number of apples you're processing, and you want to make sure you've got about 1 inch of water in the bottom. Basically, this kind of is going to create a steamed effect. If you had a steamer and we're only doing a small batch, again, that's a great way to do it because you're not adding any excess water. Adding the excess water, you're going to either want to cook that off or have a little bit runnier applesauce. It depends on your preferences. These are the apples that we harvested from that tree that fell in the garden a couple weeks back. As you can see, a few of them have gotten bruised because it was very high and they took quite the tumble down to the ground. So I am going to kind of cut off the bruised parts as we go. But basically, if you've got something sort of palm of your hand size, I would quarter that. I'm not too worried about the real bruised parts. It's more if they're kind of going bad that I would get rid of it. But when I open that up, decent inside, you're checking for wormies, and then you just bung them in. I'm actually going to, I think that's a bruise, but we're going to take it off anyways, just to be on the safe side, because I got lots of apples. Smaller ones, I would just half. They can go through my food processor like that. Again, you're watching for things. These are, after all, wild apples, so you never know. And the pigs like those parts that have the worms anyways. But we're just going to get them all cut up and in the bowl, in the pot. And then we're going to kind of simmer that until they start to break down, and then we'll bring you back. So you can see here, we are pretty much to that stage of being able to run this through our food mill. You've got, most of them are pretty mushy. There's a couple that are still firmer from my last batch that I put in, but all in all, not too bad. This is a 12-liter jar, and we are just over half full, so I'm kind of hoping that we get about 12 pint jars out of this when all is said and done. That's what I'm getting cleaned up and ready to go into the oven for sterilization. And we will start putting this through our food mill. So at this stage, here comes the main part of this homestead hack. You're going to take your apples, which are now all soft and mushy and delightful, and you're going to run them through a food mill. Now, I do have a Victoria food mill. It's a nice old one that I would say just about every canner needs to have one of these. They are great for ketchups, sauces, and now we're doing applesauce. But if you don't have this particular tool, the handheld food mill will work just fine. Depending on how thick you want that, you can use the bigger, they come with different inserts. The only thing I will say is when you go to the bigger one, you get a chunkier applesauce, but the seeds can go through that. They don't always, but some of the little ones do. So I would probably stick with the middle-sized one, like what I would use for tomato sauce as well. But I'm going to run it through the food mill. So we're going to get a few scoops in here. You still want this to be relatively hot. You don't want it to cool off too much, otherwise you're going to have a long time to reheat this again to can. But we just put some in and kind of give it the turn. You can see it's already coming out. Like I said, this is going to potentially need to cook off a little bit in order to get rid of some of that excess moisture. Just depends how thick you prefer your applesauce. But plop it in there. Take our little handy dandy pusher downer. And out it's going to come. This does make it a very fine applesauce. It's looking a little runnier now, but once you get going with all the apples, there you go, you can see it's coming through there. It thickens up, woo, quite nicely. And no seeds, no peels, no stems. It all just went a lot quicker. And the other thing that I really love about this is my applesauce stays nice and light colored, no browning, and I didn't have to soak it in lemon juice or anything like that ahead of time. As you can see on this scoop here, the apples didn't really discolor at all, which is quite nice when you're making applesauce. So we're going to get this all done, get it back in the pot, and we've got to bring it back to a boil and add all of our goodies and jar it up. But that is the end of our Homestead Hacks section about making applesauce.